podcast is intended for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Out of the Ashes presents Missing Dad.
I might have ended up on the wrong side of the tracks if Pops wouldn't have pulled me back and said, yo.
Each episode is a thought-provoking interview with people across all walks of life to see how they were affected by missing key pieces in their relationship with their dad.
I told him as a youngster, he'll be the greatest man alive.
And now your hosts, Coley Harris and Amar Melton.
Welcome to another episode of Missing Dad. I'm your co-host, Coley Harris.
And I'm the other co-host, Amar Melton.
And we are fortunate to have with us, you're a hard man to catch up with, brother. You're a hard man to catch up with.
Hey, man, it's a lot of work that got to be done out there in the streets.
We are fortunate to have with us today Daryl Chambers, one of the premier activists in the city of Wilmington, a good friend of ours, and just an all-around good brother, man. Thank you, man, and welcome to Missing Dad.
Oh, no problem. Anything that I can do to further assist you guys in your mission, please always allow me to be part of it.
So we're going to jump right into it. Daryl, what we call him Woolfie, y'all, so we're going to be authentic. Woolfie, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, like you said, my name is Daryl Chambers. Everyone around the city know me as Woolfie. Grew up in the Riverside Projects. A nurtured environment at the time. Went to Howard High School, played basketball. Eventually quit before I graduated high school. Went through a few years on the streets. Then finally got a scholarship. Went to the university. I went to play basketball again on a scholarship in California at Kings River College. Left there. Went to Armstrong State for 1 year. Then I went back out to California where I graduated from the University of California, Davis, with a degree in sociology, with an emphasis on organizational structure. Left there, was trying to find my way to grad school. Didn't really know how to get to grad school. Got in a little trouble. Wound up catching a long period of time inside the federal system. Came out of the federal system, still wanting to go to grad school. Met my mentor, Dr. Yasser Payne, a tenured professor down at the University of Delaware, who paved the way for me to go into the University of Delaware and eventually earn my degree in criminology, a master's degree. So, and ever since then, I've been taking on some of the stuff that a philosophy of his, which says that structural inequality leads to physical violence. So now I'm part of that movement right there, just trying to make things equitable for all of our young youth, so that they can take advantage of some of the opportunities that's present in most people.
Nice. So, I mean, you said a whole lot right there, but let's take it back across the highway, back over Riverside. So,
Okay.
Talk to us a little bit about how it was for you growing up in the Riverside Projects.
Riverside Project was really interesting because at the time, we were always close knit. My father wasn't there, but my father was a larger than life figure. So my father, according to him, was part of the Wilmington branch of the Black Panthers, right? I never seen no documentation, never seen no video, never seen do anything. Well, this right here is a status that he claims. But by him having that status, his friends and them always looked out for me. So even when my dad wasn't there, his friends was there. So some people say my dad didn't grow up in the household, but my dad did grow up there. And like a lot of my friends, our father just wasn't there. But we always had at that time strong mentors inside of our community centers, inside of our recreational sites. One such man was Ernie Webster down at Kingswood Community Center. I remember going down there, and he always provided us that leadership, that road to success. And sometimes we took it, sometimes we didn't take it, because there was a lot of other things going on too that sometimes distracted us from what a lot of positive people were trying to input to us.
Right.
But I would say this right here, Coley, is that what I learned later on was that even some of my closest mentors, some of the people who were close to me in Riverside, and this happened to a lot of us, is that our family just didn't have that spirit of knowledge. All they had was this little circle of knowledge. So all they was able to impart on us was what they knew. Like, for example, that being a high school basketball star in Riverside, we didn't see a lot of people going to college. So when it was time for me to make that choice to go to college, I remember going to my uncle and saying to my uncle, "Hey, all my friends are getting ready to take the SAT. I want to go to college. I got scholarship offers from Temple, North Carolina, Maryland, like South Carolina. Like I want to go to college." And he said to me, "Our family don't go to college. They wound up at GM. They wound up at Chrysler." And at that time, there was someone I trusted, and I said, "You know what? This is what we do then."
Right.
But then I remember when I didn't graduate and I went to jail for the first time, and I called home, and that same uncle answered the phone. And that uncle said to me, "This is what you need to do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to get out of prison."
Wow.
And I'm telling you, in that he had knowledge in that particular area.
Right.
You see what I'm saying, though? So that right there was like what it was like Riverside for a lot of us. I think that we were really hampered because the people around us sometimes loved us to death. They just didn't have the spirit of knowledge to really help us move beyond where we were at.
Yeah. You know what? You make me think about something. Just the rules for housing projects and stuff. And I've always carried it along like it was true, but I don't even really know. Is it true that a mother, you couldn't even have a man living in a household? Was that true back then? Is it true now? Or what?
I think that they have gotten away from that rule today. But I remember as a young boy, a young man, my
Yeah,
mom telling
inspections
me,
and all that, yeah.
"Here come WHA, here they come inspecting, hide his sneaks in the closet, put them in the trash can on back like they trash." Because I remember moving all that stuff.
Yeah.
Because at one time, they were real strict on that right there, making sure that the father was not in the home. Yeah, I do recall that right there.
Yeah.
But you said something interesting too, Corley, about the rules, and that those were rules at that time. I didn't know the impact
Yeah.
of like what they were trying to do at that time. So as a
Right.
little boy, we're just going through the course of life. That's why sometimes when a lot of us say that our dad wasn't home, there was a man home.
Right.
It's just that he didn't have the knowledge to really get us where we were supposed to be going at.
Right. Right.
You mentioned your uncle, right? You said you call home. Who were some of your other mentors that you had early on in life? Male figure mentors.
Oh, I had a lot of great male mentors. So people started taking interest in me when I was a little guy because I was big for my age.
Right.
So maybe I was 5, but I looked like I was 9. So when I became 9, I looked like I was 16. So people always took an interest in me for sports. And I remember going from junior high to high school. And I remember one time this young lady said to me, she said, "You know what, Woolfie? I like you. But your hair is never cut. Your sneakers always dirty. Your ankle ashy from running around Riverside in the dust, right? You kind of smell funny, but I like you." And I remember her because she used to like go to this little Catholic school. So she was a little Catholic dress, right? But every night she would knock on my back door and I would go outside and we would play, we'd be best friends, we'd be girlfriends, right? And then one day I approached her in front of her friends. And she said, "Oh, little dirty boy, get away from me."
Oh.
In front of her friends, right?
Oh.
And then, right, so I was messed up and I went and told my mentor, Rich Johnson, about it. Because that right there the year I was going to get a summer job. And he said, "Woolfie, this is what you got to do." He said that I need you to buy 3 pair of jeans with your money for school. You're going to buy a black pair, a blue pair, and a gray pair. And he said that I want you to buy 10 shirts. And I want you to buy 3 pairs of sneakers and wash your sneakers and watch how everything changed for you. And that right there was something that I wasn't getting. But he was telling me like, "Hey, man, you don't need a whole lot really to be neat."
Mm-hmm.
And that same young lady, 6 years later, after dunking on people and taking advice from my mentor, she came back in my life, right? And I told her, "Nah, ain't no, So, but I'm saying, but Rich Johnson down at the boys at the boys club, then Fletcher H. Brown Boys Club, he was one of them. Another one I had was he's now the deputy director of the city of Wilmington Park and Recreation. Mr. Wayne Jefferson. He was a guy like I always looked up to because he was the cool guy. Like if you want to see a cool guy, right? He walked cool.
Yeah.
He talked cool. He always dressed nice, and he came from humble beginnings like myself. And but he was the one that taught me like how to talk to women, how to treat women, and like I'll never forget the saying that he told me. He said that Woolfie, class can get you in places money can't. And I always carried that with me for even till today. That a lot of time people try to buy their way into spaces, but it's really like whether or not people like you, or how much class you got. So those right there were like two of my like main mentors.
Yeah. So with your dad though, I mean, you said your dad was like a larger than life figure. I mean, in your life growing up, like what type of like valuable lessons did he teach you along the way? You know, whether it was directly or indirectly. You know, I mean, just about life and about being a man and you know, just taking care of yourself.
So I remember one day when my father came to pick me up, because my father had caught a jail sentence like right after my mom got pregnant with me. He went to jail, got all these years. So I remember going down to the prison to see my dad. You know, he used to always say how much I looked like him, and like I was his firstborn, and I remember that him always saying that, don't think because I'm not able to provide for you that I don't love you.
Right.
Right. Same thing I tell my young guys today, because a lot of times people can get caught in relationships to where that the mother or the streets or society demonize the father to the point to where the child feels because he's not getting material stuff from his dad, therefore his dad don't love him.
Right.
And not really taking into consideration all the other thing that's going on in the father's life.
Right.
So my father told me that right there, and then eventually when I went to prison for a stint and my son was home, I had to tell my son, hey son, just because I'm not there, it doesn't mean that your dad doesn't love you. You know what I'm saying? So that right there, like one of the main things he taught me. But my dad, even though he was a so-called rebel, he actually always worked.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So he always worked, like, and like me myself, like even when I was on the streets, I always try to have a job or like go to school. And there was something that was pressed upon me from a long time. And his grandfather, who was who used to work at the old railroad yard, worked for like 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
Yep, over in South Bridge. And the whole time he thought he was buying his house. And when he died, they came in and said, no, you never signed anything to saying you was buying this house right here. So he was ripped from the system.
Wow.
So you mentioned, right? So you said you did a little bit of time. How old were you when you first caught your first case?
I caught my first case 4 or 5 years after I graduated from the University of California, Davis. And what's surprising is that I wasn't on the streets trying to get rich.
Right.
I was actually on the street trying to pay for grad school, but I didn't know how to. And one day, Mayor Seals at the time, he said, Daryl, why don't you think about going to grad school? I said, grad school? I said, okay, let me go to grad school. Looked it up. $17,000 a year at the time. I said, okay, I can get that. I can go to the streets and get that. And it was my quest to try to get enough money to take care of my family first, but also to get enough money for grad school so that I can actually get the degree that I need so that I can get my family out of Riverside. But a little bit unbeknownst to me was that grad school was actually free. But no one ever told me that at the time you could go to the University of Delaware if you was accepted in the program that I was trying to get into for free, and they gave you a stipend.
Wow.
So it was that lack of knowledge again that led me to the streets.
So now I was just going to say, so you caught your case, and so how did the trajectory of your life change from that situation?
I think that if you really talk about what they call turning points in my life, you have to go back when I first dropped out of high school. dropped out of high school. During this time right here, we were operating what I call a cash market economy, like for the drug sales, which means that you can actually go on the streets and bring home $1,500 to about $5,000 a day on a street corner.
Oh wow.
Right.
So I was saying, well, why do I need to go to school if I'm making more money here than the guy up there at DuPont?
Right.
But then it was told me that I was going to have I was going to be a dad, and it was at that moment right there that I realized that I don't want my son, right, or my daughter to grow up thinking that they got to do the same thing in order to be successful.
Right.
So that turning point right there was my son. So once again, it was my son again that was my turning point for me to go back to the school and to do the things that I needed to do. So when you look at them turning points or those things that how you change your life around, I think my son was always that right there for me.
Right. How was that penitentiary life?
The penitentiary life was like, so
Where was you at?
oh, so I first started over at I was in the federal system. So I first started over at Ferriton, which was like really close, like 40 minutes away.
Let me jump in real quick. So, is this your first case? Like, how many cases did you have?
Oh no, I'm a one-time felon.
Okay.
One-time felon. At the time, they gave me it started like 25 years. Eventually, we worked on it. We argued it. We got it down to 17, and it was crazy because I was saying like, I'm a first-time felon, never been arrested for a serious charge, and yet I get 25 years. But the guy who got caught 1,000 times, he only getting 3 years in the state jail.
Right.
So that was kind of rough for me, but that right there was actually my first charge right there, my first felony. So I'm a one-time felon.
What was it for? They tried to give you 25.
Oh, they gave me kingpin charge. They gave me my initial charge was conspiring to distribute over 150 keys of cocaine, 150 grams of crack coke. I mean, over 1.5 kilograms of crack cocaine. They enhanced me for a gun. They enhanced me for a leadership role, which at the time was illegal. We come to find out later on.
Wow.
So how was that transition coming from the free world to being in the penitentiary? And you ended up with, you said 17 years.
Yes.
How was that transition and that whole experience?
I believe that everything happened for a reason, and I believe that I had to drop out of school so that I can go back and tell kids who drop out of school that you can still get a GED and get a bachelor's degree, and you can still get a master's degree and work on a PhD.
Right.
I believe I had to go to jail because I had to be able to relate and say, you know what, I know what it feels like.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I know what it feels like to go to jail. But transition, I'll be honest with you, that if I'd have got 3 years, I don't know if I wouldn't have came back out and sold drugs again.
Right.
If I'd have got 5 years, I don't know if I wouldn't have came back out. I think that I actually needed that amount of time so that I can actually reflect, right, on what I need to do in the future.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Now, unfortunately for me, right, my child mother is super, right? So I was never badmouthed. I didn't do anything on the street that would have someone walk up to my son and say, your dad was this kind of guy.
Wow.
All I heard was like encouraging stories about his dad, right?
Right.
I never in my life, throughout all the time I hustled on the street, left a guy in prison. So a guy got locked up, he ran with me, I always got a guy out.
That's right.
So I really leave no man behind.
Right.
Right.
You see what I'm saying, though? So in that right there, even though if you're on the outside looking in, that might not be a principle that you say, well, that don't make sense. Like, you're a drug dealer. But for my son,
Yeah.
what it said was that you have to maintain your honor. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so it was like tough being away from me. But like my dad, because his dad was a larger than life figure, he always had someone looking over his shoulder.
Right.
Like I remember Councilman Namdi, right? taking my son in down at Kingswood, showing my son the right road, showing him the things to do, always have him in positive things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And just like his mother, he was a very bright kid.
Mm-hmm.
So, unlike some of his friends who didn't score high on the achievement test, he always scored in the upper 90 percentile.
Right.
So he was always placed in like the honor classes.
Right.
And those are the kind of things that by me being in jail, I didn't have to worry about because I know that he was in good hands with my folks on the street.
Right.
With you being away, I know you said it was tough being away from your son, obviously. What were some of the challenges that you faced?
It's always that ability to touch him or to console him when he was going through different periods of his life. Like not being there when so before I left, I had just signed him up for Pee Wee League football.
Right.
Like every other dad, I was overcoaching. Run over here and move over there. You ain't doing nothing, you know. I wanted him to be LeBron James, right?
Right.
I wanted him to be the Michael Jordans of the world. I wanted him to be Emmitt Smith, you know what I'm saying? But I wanted it then at 5.
Right.
I didn't, you know, and so I was overbearing. But when I left, while some of my friends tried to maintain that right there, they were unable to. So I missed all those years of taking him to the Saturday night basketball games at the YMCA, the early morning football scrimmages over at Western City,
Right.
taking him to the movies or taking him shopping to get the latest gifts. So all these things right here I really miss, but I also miss when he was struggling.
Right.
You know, in school when he wanted to ask his dad a question, because it was like a 4 or 5 day delay, which means that I got to get the letter, prison hold it for 3 days, and then I have to see if he's going to answer it and how he's going to answer it. Then I got to play that old mind game politics like, listen, this phrase come from your dad, but I also want to be his friend because I don't want to push him so far away that I'm just too overbearing on him. So over there, like, I think it was the distance because when I was at Ferriton, which was only 45 minutes away,
Right.
he could actually get there in one day. He got a problem on Monday. On Thursday, I could see him.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So I think with the distance as I move further away from Delaware.
So in your so looking at your life experience, your relationship with your father, relationship, you know what I mean, with your own son, and in the community, you know what I mean, the way you were raised, how has that impacted the person that you are today and the work that you do, and you know what I mean, things that you choose to you know what I mean, expend your time and energy on?
I'm gonna give you 2 examples. The first one, I had a really great friend. His name was Jerome Copeland, but I call him Triple R, and Triple R stands for Really Rotten Romy, right? So Really Rotten Romy was a colorful character, right? But also a mentor. And when I was in the drug game, I was able to amass a large amount of money.
How much we talking?
We're talking a lot of money, Amar. We ain't talking about shoebox money or
Okay.
pillowcase money. We talking about money, man. You got to go having 4 or 5 different houses because you don't want nobody to get all that at one time.
Okay.
So a guy had went to jail. One of Romy friends that went to jail, and it was the holiday season. And I didn't even celebrate the holidays at the time.
Right.
And he said, "Did you drop something off to the old his family?" I said, "Man, this is my money. Why would I do that?" He said, "Because the rule says that when old heads go down, legends go down, when good people go down, then you're obligated to help their families, especially during the holidays." And I never forgot that, right? Like that thing right there so to me, what that translated to was that no matter where I go at in life, I'm obligated to reach back and give back to my community, right?
Right.
So that right there is like a hardcore principle that I still stand by to this day. The other thing was the death of my son. So my son was shot on September the 14th, 2011. My first year of graduate school. I'm studying for marks at the time. I got a paper due in about 4 days. And I remember coming home from Barnes and Nobles and getting a phone call just as I pulled over to my house, my East Side house. And his mom said, your son been shot. I said, my son been shot? So I left my bag there at the step. I jumped in the car and I run all the lights. And as I'm going over there, I'm thinking, he must have been in the crossfire. Because who would shoot Woolfie's son? That don't make sense. Like, who would shoot Woolfie's son? Like, what did he do? Right? Honor roll student, just graduated, trying to get into the service. Who would shoot Dominique, the guy who's always trying to maintain peace?
Right.
And not only that, like, how come somebody in the community didn't call me? Because at that time, I was already doing the work.
Right.
Like, going out there, trying to mediate conflicts. I'm already doing the work. And I'm saying, no, it can't be so. So as I pull up, the first thing I see is on his mother's door is a blood stain. It's about 3 feet. And I see the paramedic frantically working on him, pumping his chest. You can see him working. So I try to run past there. And as I ran past there, the police officer said, you can't stop. Matter of fact, the first person that grabbed me was Trippy Congo, the councilman district representative over there in District 2. He said, Wolf, you don't want to go up there. And when I looked at him, he brought me just enough time to reflect and think about what was going on.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So the one thing I learned from that night was that you always need people around you during times of difficulties that can help you navigate stuff. Because sometimes you can get bad advice, which is going to lead me to another part of the story later on. So I remember they got him in the car and they took him down to Christiana Hospital, and I'm riding behind him. We get there and all my friends are congregating around, and over the intercom it says, cold blue, cold blue, cold blue to room. And everybody started running, the doctor started running. And 2 minutes later they say, call cold blue off, cold blue off. And I turned to his mother that day and I said, at that moment I said, you know your son is dead. She started crying, everybody started crying. And as the word spread around the emergency room, people associated with me came to me and said, hey, listen, let's go get him. Let's go kill his mom, his dad, his sister, his aunt, the uncles, the neighbors, the cat, the rats, the roaches, the bugs in the front yard. Let's go kill everybody. I said, let's go. But I remember his mom calling me back. And she said, where are you going? I said, I'll be back. She said, well, let me ask you a question first. I said, now's not the time. She said, no, let me ask you a question. I said, no, not the time. She said, I said, okay, go ahead. She said, if you was on a bus and you had 250 people, I said, no, not the time. She said, no, but if you had 250 people on a bus and if you turned left, you would kill all of them. Would you make that turn? I said, no. She said, but you had 250 people on that bus and you turned right and only one of them died. Which option? There was only 2 options, Woolfie. Which one are you going to take? I said, well, we're going to save the many. She said, well, know that your son is dead. So it's your job right now to go out there and save 250 young black and brown men so that their family will never have to suffer what you suffer today. And she said, what you need, Woolfie, you don't need no bloody revolution. You need an economic, a political, a social, and a spiritual revolution. So you go out there and you start that movement.
Right.
And it made me go back and turn around because now all the things that had happened to me before, now they begin to make sense.
Right.
Woolfie, because you know they say like your life flash in front of your eye?
Yeah.
Now my childhood stuff from Riverside is making sense. Why it was important for me to have structure down at the boys club. Why it was important for me to learn to go there to tell kids, right, you don't need a whole lot of stuff in order to look clean and to be presentable. And how class can get you into places that money can't get you into. And how all of a sudden now it was important for me to get back to my community. All this stuff now came crashing down on me. So I turned to my friend and said, hey, everybody go home. So once again, it was that one person in the room, that one guiding light, like Trippy, like Romy, like Rich Brown, like Wayne Jefferson, like Ernie Webster. It was that one moment, that one person in your life that said, you know what? You have a greater purpose than what you're talking about.
Right.
Then she said, well, who's going to raise his son? And it was that moment of clarity that I said, everybody go home.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying, though? But though right there was all the things that I learned from being in Riverside.
Yeah. Wow, that was a lot.
Yeah, that was heavy.
That was a lot. So, I mean, switching gears just a little bit. Yeah, that was a lot. So the work that you're doing now, you know what I mean, with University of Delaware and in the community, and the work that all the different work that we do together. You know, how's that motivation go towards exactly what you were just talking about? You know what I mean? Making sure that you're working to make sure nobody's family feel the way that you felt in that moment.
Now, keep in mind that we're working under a theoretical framework called that posit that structural inequality leads to physical violence. So what are we saying? We're saying that a kid is more likely to engage in as a victim or as a perpetrator if he attends an underperforming school, he don't have access to quality health care, he live in deep concentrated poverty, no home ownership, there's a lack of jobs, political engagement is minimal.
Right.
All these things right here. So I'm saying, well, how can we, as a community, use our social capital? How can we use our street credibility to make things equitable? How can we level the playing field?
Right.
So going back to our political revolution. So the first thing that we found out was that we don't have the civic leadership that reflects our view.
Right.
Right? They don't. So there's no way in the world that we have a black majority on city council, but yet you see our parks in disarray. You see our school system, even though the city don't have control over the schools, right? As a body, you also have the power to speak out on it.
Right.
So when you have 400 kids in the school and only 60 of them are actually reading and writing at proficiency, that's a problem. That's right. Structural. Especially when you got 99% of the kids a few blocks away at Ursuline who are graduating.
Right.
So that's structural inequality right there. And you know that if you're not able to read by the third grade, that predictor itself right there, just that one variable itself right there, leads to devastating outcomes in the future.
That's right. Because
you remember people, and you have been around people, or I have been around people when I was in the penitentiary who couldn't read, who couldn't write.
Right.
And they wasn't really bad people. But when that stuff was confronted, if you said they couldn't read or write, they became some of the most violent people because it's all about pride. Right? So those right there are some of the things that that I've learned. But if I can go back for 1 minute, the thing that I'm really trying to empower is also our young women.
Right.
So I talked earlier about how my son left me a grandson. But he also has a brother. And his brother lost his dad to gun violence. So now we have a mother, right? My grandson's mother. Both of her baby fathers have been killed by gun violence. Wow. So right, we had this triple compound trauma in this family now. Right. So now I got both of these young guys who don't have fathers. So the work that I'm doing is saying that, hey, your father was good people.
That's right.
Your father was large in life. And we're going to make sure that we construct a narrative that it shows that we actually care about you. See, because there's a lot of narrative out there that black men don't love their children,
Right.
which is false. A black man in jail, he don't love his children. Black men don't believe in God. Black men are not spiritual. All these things right here. Because once you create that boogeyman image, it's easier to persecute him.
Easier.
Right.
That's right.
It's easier to persecute him right there. But what some of the stuff that we're doing now is that we're showing them through that same mentoring process that your circle of knowledge or your circle of influence just don't have to be Riverside. It don't have to be Wilmington.
Right.
It could be the same thing that opened my eyes up when I went to California, and it took 20 men to hold hands to wrap around a tree. It was mind blowing for me.
Right.
And I said, wow, the world is really big.
Yeah.
I thought I was Paul Bunyan somebody, man. I didn't know what was going on. I actually seen a tree so big that the leaves didn't even start until about 20, 40, 50 stories up. I'm saying, what is going on here?
Oh, wow.
Right? And when you get to see things like the sunset over the San Francisco Bay, when it looks like the whole place is on fire, right? When you actually get to experience like looking inside the Grand Canyon,
Yeah.
right? These are the experiences now that we are bringing to our young folks. And these are the things we have to do. So with one of the programs I have is high school students who are being mentored by first year college students.
Right.
And I got them first year college students being mentored by graduate students, right? And I got them right there, and we got a whole host of black professors, black and brown professors who are also mentoring them.
Right.
So that we can create a street to college pipeline.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's not so I'm saying we don't need that school to prison pipeline. We're saying, hey, we're going to take you from the streets and we're going to put you in college.
Right.
And we're going to teach you these valuable research skills so that you can earn a livable wage and take care of your family.
That's beautiful. I mean, that's good work. You know, when I think about that, and it just makes me think about just like young men in the community, you know what I mean, the issues we got with the violence and just making sure that we building stronger young men, you know, stronger young men, stronger parents in general. But, you know, we talking about fatherhood so that these young guys can grow up and be there for their kids and not get caught up in these streets and all the violence and negative stuff that's going on in the community. But I also want to mention that it's a lot of good stuff. I've been paying one of my New Year's not resolution, but you know, I mean, just something I wanted to do to kind of switch gears a little bit is start focusing on more of the positivity, man. And I've really, I've been doing that and seeing just people like young people with their kids and playing, and you can see them, you know what I mean, and people trying to get by and they trying to make it and they trying to, you know what I mean, take care of it and take care of their families. And in my mind, it's like, you know, Cola, you have to do everything that you can do to try to help this young person, this young woman, this young man be successful in their family, you know, because, you know what I mean, I didn't talk a lot about my situation, but, you know what I mean, everybody knows Out of the Ashes is the presentation and the intervention is built around fatherlessness and me being out of Mars life for 14 years between the ages of 2 and 16 years old. And you know what I mean, so that stuff that's really important to us is the core of what it is that we do. And you know, I don't want people to have to go back and try to fix stuff. You know what I mean? Let's fix it on the front end. Let's allow for them to, you know what I mean, to grow up, be healthy individuals. They're gonna make mistakes, but allow for them to be healthy individuals, you know what I mean, on the front end and go through that process like that, man. So I really, really appreciate like all the work that you're doing, man. And
Yeah.
everything. And I admire you and I look up to you, man.
Right.
I really do.
Yeah,
I really
sure.
do, man.
Right.
So with you being out of your son's life for a large chunk of his life, right, and then you come home and you return back to society, and now you have this grandson. How does that time away impact how you deal with your grandson? Like, what's life like with Woolfie as a grandfather?
Oh, it's wonderful. Like I work with the city on a project, and one of the things the city has been trying to do is they've been trying to go to hot spots in the city and create these temporary safe zones, right? They call it play streets, right? Great concept. We should have it every day, all day, on all the areas that we consider high needs areas, right? But what they basically do is that they come out and they set up, they block off maybe a 2 to 3 block area in the city, and they open up the streets. They bring out games, they bring out basketball, they bring out healthy snacks, blood pressure stuff, different diabetic screenings, and they just allow the kids to be kids. Right? So the kids don't got to worry about eating. The kids don't got to worry about gunshots. He don't want nobody selling no dope or crack on his block today. All he got to do is be a kid.
Right.
And I picked my grandchildren up, because I call both of my grandchildren.
Okay.
And I allowed them just to be kids. And I allowed them to just run around and be kids. And it's like the best time in the world. They wake up in the morning, Papa, are we going to play streets today? Ain't no play streets today. I said, it's Friday, ain't no play streets. Oh, man.
Yeah.
I said, but listen, let's go somewhere else. But I think that it goes to the thing, presence and presence. Sometimes you can give gifts, and it's just not enough. Because that's how it started out, giving gifts. But then I realized it was my presence that they needed. They need to just be around me. And the moments that I really appreciate with my grandkids the most is that when I'm able in a car with someone, we're having a conversation. We're having a conversation about, and this right here is done intentionally. We're having a conversation about how fun it is at work, right? So I don't go, to your point, and talk about, man, today at work, they worked me, boy. I'm telling you, I worked so hard that I don't never want to go back again. I always say, man, we were at work today and Professor Dan said something and everybody started laughing. We had fun, and that's not no 8 hours later, it was time to go, and all we did was have fun and laugh all day. Because I don't want them to view work as something that's negative.
Right.
So when I'm around my other friends, we might talk about, well, when I was in college or when I was in high school and how much fun I had, and how, like you want to go to the frat houses, and you want to go see the black young ladies and the sororities and stuff, and then later on, right, you'll hear him, Papa, I'm going to UD. And that's music to my ears when you have your kids talking about that, because that's not language that I would have said at 9 years old.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I think that transitioning and being at Pop has been wonderful and exciting. I believe they're too spoiled. But I don't think that right there is reversible at this point right here.
No, it's too late.
Yeah, it's too late. They so now, so they are part of that instant oatmeal group. But the one thing that I really do stress is like reading.
Yeah.
So we have to read. You can play your games, you can do all that, but you're going to read and you're going to do math. So with the little one, his name's Issa. Issa just didn't want to learn how to count. So I said, okay, how can we get Issa to be interested in numbers? So now what I did was every week I changed the password on the tablet. So he got to learn it. So at first it was 1, 2, 3, 4. Then I said, Issa, we're going to go to a longer password, the 6-digit password. Do it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Right.
So within a month, Issa knew how to count to 10, because we had set it up so that in order for you to play that game, memorize it. And I'm telling you, Pop, I know the password for the day. You see what I'm saying? But that right there was a way that we bind together, but also that we can impart some of the thing that's going to help them later in life.
Right. So, well, we're going to thank you. Do you have any parting words? Any parting words? Any words of wisdom?
Yes. I just want to let some of the folks know, because sometimes, Coley, we do this work and people actually don't know the sacrifices that we make.
Right.
Still, right? That sometimes I'm not home with my family when I need to be. I leave early. I come home late. And sometimes people might see us in the paper, or we might be amongst a crowd that people look up to and they give us shout outs, and people think that, oh, I can do this work.
Mm-hmm.
Not recognizing that there's a certain level of expertise that go into this.
Right.
You know, but sometimes like guys like yourself and Amar and Mitch and Detter and Hamza, like, y'all make the work look so easy. Right? Y'all make the struggle look so easy that people believe that they can just come in there and do the work. And sometimes that right there in itself could be a disservice. Because then people, unbeknownst to people who don't know that there is various levels of social capital, they believe now that any black man who has been in jail, who has been involved with the criminal justice system, is the right person to address some of our kids' needs. No, you got to know something that you always say. You got to know about gun politics.
That's right.
Right? And now it's not even enough to be just passionate. You got to be competent. Right? Same thing Dr. Payne always say, right? Okay, well, we want to be able to give a emotional speech at a wedding, at a graduation. But we also want to be able to give an academic speech at Harvard and Yale and down at Howard University.
Right.
So right there is a need for both of them. And sometimes you get people on either one or two sides. They're either hardcore competent, or they're too passionate. They don't believe that science matters. Right. And the science matters. And that's right there what I'm trying to say. And the last thing is that when you talk about being positive, we really try to take ownership of our narrative. So we don't call our children high risk. We don't use delinquent, maladaptive. Like, those aren't the kind of words that we use to describe our youth.
Right.
And parting with this right here, when I first met Dr. Payne, this how he won me over. He said that he was talking about, and I'm gonna paraphrase, about armchair scholarships. It was a lady who was out on the streets. She had lost her father, her parents at an early age, right? So she was in foster care where she got molested. So when she had children, she didn't allow her children to go to daycare. She homeschooled them. She didn't, according to the records of the IRS, she didn't work. So they had labeled her as this bad mom.
Right.
But when you went and actually talked to her, what you found out was that she had a makeshift daycare. She washed clothes for people, meaning that she got up 5 o'clock in the morning. She sold dinners to supplement her income, and she homeschooled her kids during the middle part of the day. So she was anything except but lazy.
Right.
She was a strong, hard-working woman. But if you don't know both sides of that story, right? If you just rely on just the numbers, you can't see the person.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But if you just concentrate on the person, then sometimes you don't get the numbers.
Right.
And my thing that there's a need for both of them, and this right there is what we learned through working with Dr. Payne and some of the other true scholars who understand that there's a need for both compassion and competency. Right. I'll leave y'all with that.
Wow. Oh, man, we want to thank you, man, for a beautiful interview, man, and giving up your Saturday afternoon. I don't think I cut into your football time.
No, not yet.
Not yet. So, again, from Missing Dad, we're just going to close out. My name is Coley Harris, I'm your co-host.
And this is Amar Melton.
And thank you for listening to Missing Dad.